If you've been thinking about moving to Stittsville, you've probably seen the usual descriptions online: growing suburbs, great schools, new builds, family friendly. But that doesn't actually help you decide if you're going to like living here. So in this video, I'm going to break down what Stittsville really feels like, how it's divided into different little micro pockets, and what the houses actually look like. I'm also going to talk about the schools, what they're really known for, what traffic is like, and the other stuff that locals don't usually explain until after you've already moved here. So by the end of this video, you should have a very clear idea if Stittsville fits your routine, not just your budget. Now, just like Kanata, Stittsville isn't one single vibe. It's broken up into different little pockets, and each one is going to feel slightly different from one another. This is something that most relocation videos are going to skip over. So let's start with the oldest part of Stittsville. Old Stittsville is the area around Main Street. So this is the original core of Stittsville. You'll find older homes here, larger trees, deeper lots, and a little bit more character, I would say, in the architecture. It's a little bit different. It's more unique. Some of these homes go back several decades. So you'll see a little bit of a mix of bungalows, split levels, detached homes, and they don't all look identical or super cookie cutter. There's a little bit more variety, which a lot of people actually really like once they see it in person. This is also the only part of Stittsville that still feels even somewhat walkable. You can walk to coffee shops pretty easily, and there are quite a few in the area. Ritual on Main is actually one of the more popular ones. You can even walk to the farmers market at Village Square Park. There are a ton of small local businesses that really give it that village feel that people always talk about when they describe Stittsville. It's definitely older than most parts, but it doesn't feel like it's run down, so it still feels pretty established. Now, if you like slightly bigger lots and you don't mind older layouts that might need updating a little bit over time, this area appeals to a lot of families. I will say though, it does get pretty congested during rush hour, especially on Stittsville Main Street when you're trying to connect towards Carp. So something to keep in mind. Now, if we look at different areas like Crossing Bridge, Timbermere, and some of the more established pockets, this is where it starts to look a little bit more different. They're definitely not as old as what you would see closer to Main Street, but they're not necessarily brand new either. You still get detached homes, decent lot sizes, a little bit more variety in exterior finishes, and it doesn't really feel identical house after house. There's a little bit more personality to these areas as well. So these neighborhoods feel very stable. You'll see kids walking home from school. You'll see neighbors chatting in the driveway in the evenings. It's very family friendly, and it's very family heavy as well. And honestly, this is where most people move when they want that balance between newer suburban areas and a little bit more of an established suburban area. Now, once you leave Main Street and start heading south and west, this is where you're going to find Fernbank and Blackstone, and this is honestly where a lot of relocation families end up. The homes here are a little bit newer. There's more open concept layouts, bigger kitchens, larger windows. You'll see a lot of detached homes, a lot of newer townhouses, and some condos sprinkled in, but it's mostly still very house driven. Now, I'm not going to lie, it does feel a little bit more cookie cutter over here. I won't pretend that it doesn't, but it also feels clean and organized. The streets are a little bit wider, the sidewalks are in good shape, parks are built directly into the subdivisions, so you're rarely far from one. And what I like about this area is that it doesn't feel run down at all. Everything still looks fresh. Now, because it grew so quickly, you'll still see construction in certain pockets. Some streets feel completely finished, and others still have a few lots being built. So depending on the exact division, it can feel either fully established or still growing. Now, Fairwinds is interesting because this is where Kanata and Stittsville basically kind of blend into each other. And if you're not really paying attention, you won't even notice where one ends and the other one begins. You are right near the Canadian Tire Center, so yes, during big hockey games or concerts, Huntmar and Maple Grove can get really, really busy, so you will feel that. It's not constant, obviously, but when there's an event, you'll definitely know. Now, that said, this location is extremely convenient. You're basically right in the middle. Kanata shopping is right there. You have the Tanger outlets, you have Centrum, you have Costco. The Stittsville shopping center is right there. So is the Hazeldean strip, which has a lot of local spots. And of course, some big box stores. The housing here is mostly early 2000s built, so you'll see a mix of detached homes and townhouses. And there are actually quite a few 3-story townhouses that tend to be a little bit more on the affordable side, which makes this area attractive for not only first-time buyers, but single parents trying to stay in the West End without pushing their budget into the high 800s. You are also extremely close to the highway, and what surprises a lot of people is that you don't really hear it. So for commuters, that is a huge plus. This area feels slightly busier than deeper of a Stittsville, but it doesn't necessarily feel chaotic either. So if your work is in Kanata, this is probably one of the easiest pockets to live in, while still technically being in Stittsville. Now let's talk about the houses themselves, because this is usually what pulls people into Stittsville in the first place. Stittsville is not condo heavy. They are starting to build more. There are actually a couple developments planned along Hazeldean, and you'll see smaller condo projects starting to pop up, but this is still very much a house-driven suburb. What you'll mostly find here are detached homes, townhouses, and in some of the older pockets, you'll find a lot more bungalows. And the detached homes here are what a lot of relocation families picture when they think suburban Ottawa. Two-story homes, driveways, backyards that are actually usable, streets that don't feel packed tightly together. Townhomes right now are generally starting in the mid 600s. The detached homes can start in the mid 700s in some of the older areas, but once you move into the newer builds or some of the larger models, you're easily looking at high 800s, 900s, and even up to 1.3 range, depending on the size, location, and lot size. And yes, compared to parts of the East End like Orléans, Stittsville can be a little bit more on the expensive side in certain divisions, especially newer detached homes. But here is the difference. When families choose Stittsville at that price point, they're not just there for buying the square footage. They're trying to buy into those quieter streets. A lot of families move to Stittsville because the subdivisions where most of the homes are still well maintained. They're buying neighborhoods where it feels structured and clean and not overcrowded. Now, similar to Kanata, schools are a huge reason why families end up in Stittsville. So when somebody relocating asks me, are there good schools? They're not looking for a ranking number necessarily. They're trying to figure out and picture their kid at this particular school and if it's a good fit for them. So let's go one by one. We have St. Stephen Elementary, and that sits at about an 8.3 ranking out of 10. So this school comes up constantly. Parents like it because you hear consistent feedback from families who are already there. Kids tend to be settled. Teachers have a good reputation for communication. The parent community is also very active, which affects everything from fundraising to extracurricular programs. It also doesn't have a reputation for constant turnover or a lot of, chaos going on with it. So for a lot of families, that steadiness is the draw. Now, when kids move into high school, the name you'll hear the most is Sacred Heart, and that is sitting at around an 8.2 ranking out of 10. This school in particular has a very strong academic culture. So they offer AP courses, which attracts students who are aiming for competitive university programs. You'll also see strong athletics here. So football is really big, hockey, basketball, volleyball, and their teams compete seriously across the region. There is a lot of pride in that school. Students tend to be involved, parents talk about it with intention, and a lot of families will specifically search within the Sacred Heart boundary. Now, if you're looking for Catholic French education, Jean Paul, sitting around an 8.0, is another one that comes up a lot. Parents like it because it builds bilingual skills early on. So in Ottawa, that's very practical, obviously, because we are a bilingual city. And it opens the door for more employment opportunities later on. So families see it as they're setting their kids up for the long term. Guardian Angels, just under an 8 out of 10, is another school families ask about specifically. It has a really good reputation for steady academics and strong community involvement. Now, here's something you need to know if you're relocating. Stittsville grew quickly over the last decade. So yes, some schools will have portables in the schoolyard. Some parents are completely fine with that, while others have a little bit more of a mixed feeling. So it really just depends on the classroom experience more than the building itself. Something to also keep note of is the catchment zones. So just because a house is close to a school doesn't automatically mean that you're going to be in that school boundary. So when a client comes to me looking within a specific school zone, this is how we're setting up your search. This way, before writing any offers, we're not assuming which school your kids will be able to go to. Now, if you're commuting downtown every day, you're looking at a minimum of 30 minutes without traffic. Rush hour can really stretch that by at least another 30 minutes. And you may very well hate it, but it's definitely the trade-off for living in Stittsville. In my opinion, Stittsville does not feel as congested as other areas in Ottawa, like Barrhaven, for example. But that doesn't mean that there isn't traffic at all. There are a few areas that can get quite backed up. So if you look at the area near the two major high schools, that can get very congested during drop-off and pickup. So I'm talking about St. Paul de Marais and the new Stittsville Public High. It wasn't designed well originally, but they have expanded the road network recently, so it's definitely helped a lot. They actually built another road that brings you directly into Hazeldean, which is the main road for shopping and restaurants in Stittsville. It's also going to connect to some of the newer subdivisions that are being built here, and eventually where the new LRT will be as well. Carp and Hazeldean is another pressure point. It narrows and feeds towards the highways, so it can back up during peak times. They are expanding parts of it too, so that should improve over time. Sometimes where Kanata and Stittsville meet near the Canadian Tire Center can get pretty backed up, but that's really only during major events there. Now, public transit obviously does exist here, but to be very honest with you, the OC Transpo hasn't had the best reputation for reliability. I would definitely call Stittsville a car-based neighborhood. So if you're a family with kids in school and multiple sports and one or both parents working outside the area, you will need at least one car. A lot of families have two, but not because it's nice to have, but because it's almost necessary. There aren't really many areas in Stittsville that are completely walkable. I would say the most walkable pocket is the older part of Stittsville near Main Street. Stittsville unfortunately doesn't have a large enclosed shopping mall. So yes, if you're picturing something like the Rito Center, that is unfortunately not going to be here in Stittsville. But along Hazeldean, you've got a lot of favorite stores like Winners, HomeSense, Michael's, grocery stores, a bunch of different restaurants. It's all pretty clustered together. Because you're so close to Kanata, you can easily enjoy more shopping at the Kanata Centrum. It's just a couple of minutes away and you'll have even more shopping like Walmart, Indigo, closest theater, which would be the Cineplex. It's all pretty close by. Tanger Outlets is another one here. So this is an outdoor outlet mall. There's a playground and a park area for the kids, and they usually hold some really fun events for families there in the summer and the fall. It is still open during the winter, and it's a popular spot for Christmas shopping. It does obviously get cold, but they have some warming stations with fireplaces, and it's really decorated nicely for the holidays. Now, if you still need something very specific that isn't here, you do have pretty access easy to one of our biggest malls, which is in Bayshore. And that's really only 15 minutes away by car. Very easy to get to, and it's very close to the highway. We do have some great restaurants here, but I wouldn't say this is necessarily where the best restaurants are in Ottawa. There are a few that have a really good reputation though, like the Cheshire Cat and Cabotto's. So if you are a really big foodie, Stittsville doesn't have all that much to offer in the food scene. Another really big question I get is Stittsville boring? Because when you look at it on a map, it does seem a little bit removed from the core of Ottawa, and it can feel like you're choosing quiet over everything else. So let me paint a picture of what a typical weekend here actually looks like. If you have kids, I can almost guarantee you're going to be busy with sports. We're talking early morning practices, swimming lessons, basketball games at Sacred Heart, hockey at the Sensplex. Your Saturdays are definitely going to fill up fast. Almost every other weekend, your kid is going to have some type of birthday party somewhere, maybe the Kanata Trampoline Park, at Max Games, or even Splitsville now, which is a newer bowling alley that just recently opened up in Kanata. Now, is Stittsville the best place for maybe a nice night out or a date night? Not necessarily, but for families, there's usually quite a bit going on. There are several golf courses nearby. The Trans-Canada Trail runs through here and connects to different parts of the city, so it's a great place to go bike riding with the kids. There are multiple recreation centers for skating and swimming and many different programs. The libraries here are also pretty great, and one of our most popular parks is Walter Baker. It has a huge park and a hill that basically becomes a sledding hill all winter long. There isn't necessarily a ton of entertainment here, but I wouldn't necessarily call it boring either. So what is the community actually like here? Why do people love Stittsville so much? This is the part that's kind of hard to explain until you've actually lived here. Halloween here is honestly one of my favorite things. It's busy, entire streets participate. You'll see inflatables everywhere, lights on, parents sitting at the end of their driveways talking to each other while the kids run house to house. It doesn't feel like you're knocking on random doors. It feels like the whole street is in on it. And it's safe enough that you're not constantly on edge. Kids are everywhere, people are out, it feels active in a really good way. Christmas is pretty much the same energy. There is a street that goes all out with massive inflatable Santas and snowmen almost every single house. And every year someone makes an interactive map so families can drive around the areas and see all of the decorated streets. Throw the kids into the car with some hot chocolate, throw on some Christmas music, and go look at the Christmas lights. It's simple, but it's really nice. Canada Day fireworks happen right here in Stittsville as well, so you don't have to go all the way downtown and deal with all the huge crowds. You bring a blanket, sit on the grass, watch the fireworks, and you're home fairly quickly. And you know what? The fireworks are pretty good compared to the ones downtown. Block parties are another thing that are pretty normal here. So you'll have one driveway grilling and another house setting up a bouncy castle. Someone brings out speakers. It's not rare here. These actually do happen. There are also neighborhood-wide garage sale weekends where almost every house participates. People are walking around with coffee, kids are selling lemonade at the park, neighbors are actually talking to each other instead of just rushing inside. In the winter, neighbors maintain skating rinks in the park themselves. They shovel them, they flood them, they keep them going. It's not the city doing it, it's the people who actually live here. If you're thinking about moving to Ottawa, I've not only helped many families move here, but I've also done a few relocation moves myself, so I know just how hard it can be. If you are in need of some guidance and trying to figure things out, set up a call with me. I'll leave a link in the description for you.